What's up, guys and girls? Welcome back to Project GLander. We are rebuilding my GL320 X164 truck, trying to get it ready for some light off-roading duty. Now, if you've missed everything we've done so far, click here to check out the playlist and catch up on everything we did in episode 1, 2, and 3. We pulled the motor, did some pretty serious maintenance, and we're now in the process of putting everything back together and getting in the car. Now, my hope for this episode was to actually put everything together and get in the car. However, we started looking into rebuilding the transfer case. Got a nice big kit ready to go here. And to be honest, this is a big enough job that is gonna get its own episode. So in episode 4, today, that's what we're gonna do. Let's split this open. Let's replace everything we can get our hands on, and let's try and mount it back on the transmission. Most people have an issue with their transfer case because the chain gets loose and it starts rattling. But I don't actually have that problem. Like I said in the previous episode, I've got more of a whiny problem, which to me is attributed to the bearings probably just being old and noisy. And we were trying to figure out, like, do we really want to open this up? It looks like somebody's already been inside by the seal here. The only thing that I can figure out right now is this is what I think that might be the problem. So I think we've got noisy bearings that just need to be replaced. I think our chain's probably good, probably still stretched, but all of the bearings sound pretty noisy. Let's open this up. First, we gotta drain the fluid, and then we're gonna open all of the bolts and split it up. Yeah, this oil was changed. I personally changed it, but it does not look very good. All right, that was the easy part. I think this is supposed to just come straight up, but we do have sealant, so. All right, there we go. I was hoping not to see that. Like I already said, somebody has been in here before me because it's pretty obvious from the sealant. It did not look factory. And unfortunately, the issue that you can kind of see here is that the little guide for the chain is missing. Now, this is a common problem. These things did break. This is a known issue for the transfer case. Unfortunately, it looks like what happened was the previous owner had an issue with this, opened it up, I guess took out the missing pieces and just closed it back up. Now, there's no way for me to really repair this because frankly, I'm not gonna start welding this up or anything like that. So unfortunately, I think I'm just gonna have to put this back together. We'll take a look at the chain, see really how much slack there is, but I guess I'm gonna have to start looking for another transfer case because this, like without the guide here, this chain is always going to, flop around. Now the car was working fine. I didn't really have any big problems, but as you can tell, I've got sort of shavings all over the place. So I'm guessing sooner or later, this is gonna cause a problem. So this is bad news. Let's take a look at that chain. So these things just come straight up. They're on splines right out of the, there we go. The sprockets look like they're okay. Although you can kind of see here where the chain's been chewing away at the guides. There's no stretch in the chain, so I'm guessing when they open this up, they probably replaced the chain. We'll take a look at the bearings in a second, but the chain should be fine. If we look at this bearing here, it's quite noisy. So, and I think this one on the other side as well. So I suspect this is where the whining comes from. So the real question right now is, do we replace the bearings and put this back together? Do we go look for another transfer case? Do we not replace it and just assume that this one's going to grenade itself eventually and live with the whine and look for another transfer case that we can rebuild? Good questions. You can kind of see all of the sort of aluminum that's been collecting up here. And I'm guessing most of that comes from where the chain was dragging here. Right, so the question is, what are we going to do about the chain guide? All right, now clearly we're going to replace the bearings. They're noisy. I already have them, so we're not going to close this up without replacing the bearings. But what are we going to do about the chain guide? Now, I spent a little bit of reading online. Whether that's a good idea or not, I'm not really sure. But a lot of people are having this problem. Seems like it's a very, very common problem on this transmission. In fact, it comes up as far as I understand, something like half of the cores one of the companies in California gets back have broken studs, and they don't fix them, so to speak. Now, there's a way, I suppose what we could do is we could level this off, re-drill the holes, put some spacers, put the guide on. But the reality is, whoever opened this up before us saw this, took out the guide, put everything back together with a new chain, and then the car's been driving around for, I've had it for 3 years, never really had a problem other than the noisy whine that I've got. So I think to save myself an extra headache of trying to repair this and then not really knowing what's going to happen once we close it, I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to leave it as is. It's probably not the most mechanically sound way to do this. The best way to do it is to really source another transfer case, used low mileage, hopefully, transfer case, because I think this is pretty much the same from any vehicle that's R class, ML class, GL class, and I think it goes all the way up to the 166, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So the best option is to source a new transfer case, but I don't want to do that. I've already spent way too much money on this. I think by last count, we're about $4,000 trying to rebuild this. So I don't want to spend another, $400 or $500 trying to find another transfer case, wait a couple of weeks, get it, still have to rebuild it. Anyways, what I'm going to ultimately do is put this back the way it was without the guide. Now the chain has been replaced, so I guess what happened is when they opened it up, they cleaned it out, replaced the chain, put it back together. They didn't replace the bearings because the bearings are very noisy. So the chain's replaced, it's not stretched. My brand new chain is the exact same length as the one we pulled out. So I'm actually gonna put the chain right back, and I'm gonna keep the new chain for another rebuild if we ever have to do one. I'm guessing the R class or the ML class will probably have it. The only thing I'm going to do is actually shave this down a little bit, because you can see where the chain has been hitting the post here. And I guess without the guide, what happens is the chain has enough slack to kind of to come around and knock this, which would explain all of the shavings in here. So clean it, take it apart, replace the bearings, replace the seals, shave the post down so the chain's not hitting them anymore, and close it up. So this is looking pretty good. No wear anywhere that I can see on this. There's a ring on this side that's sitting on the bearing. So let's get the lock ring off here, and then we can take the seal and the ring out. All right, that's one out. There it is. We've got a new one in, and that's that side done. The second one here we have to actually get off camera because it's a bit hard to show you. So the shaft here comes in through the bearing. The bearing itself has a very distinct lip right there, and in that lip goes this little ring. you can see it. So to actually get this out, what you got to do is you got to squeeze this ring as it is in place and then push the shaft down. So this sits like this, and the ring comes through and locks it in place. Now on the other side, I think you guys can see that, the bearing has got a very nice cone-shaped entry. So when you're putting that back in, it will actually be pretty straightforward because it will compact the ring on its own, come in, and then lock it in place. Okay, so that's one. That's number 2 out. And one more seal on this side. So like I mentioned, what I want to do is I want to actually clean this off a little bit. This is where the chain's been hitting it. So once the guide mounts broke off, obviously they're not there, so they were removed, but the chain's been just slowly chewing this away as it comes along. So what I want to do is I want to just bring it down somewhere below this line here so that the chain is free to move around without knocking it. And there it is. So this is a little bit cleaner. I've brought it down, and the whole point is that the chain, as it spins around, even if it flops around a little bit, it's not going to be knocking off the aluminum here and then getting the oil dirty. Now we just have to clean up the seal, wash the case, and we're ready to put it back together. That's the 1/2 done. And hopefully there's some improvement over what it was. Now let's get the other one done. Here we actually have 2 needle bearings. So you got one on this side, and this is actually a bearing on itself. So we can knock one out or just do it after when we take the shaft off. We've got 2 bearings, one in the back here, one in the front here. Diff goes back in. Now we gotta put the chain back on. So we need the 2 sprockets. I'm guessing this one is like that. Or not. So this isn't ideal. Obviously we don't have the guide at the top, but now that I've filed it down, the chain doesn't really hit the casing anymore. And I didn't really have a problem with the chain. As you saw, there's no stretch on it. So we should be okay. This is pretty, it should not be able to slip any teeth. So let's close this up and call it a day. So we've got some gasket maker and we gotta put the 2 together. The last thing to do now is put the transfer case back in place using the 2 guide pins on the left and on the right. There we go. That was easy. That's it for this episode, guys. We learned some very important things today. The previous owner's clearly gone and done some of the major items that are generally associated with the X164 and W164 platforms, the oil cooler seals, the transfer case, etc. The second thing we learned today is that I'm no better than the previous schmuck that opened this transfer case because I did exactly what he did, which is open it up, look at it, close it back up, slap it back on the car and hope it works. Here we're gonna apply the main engineering principle, that is, if it ain't broke, fix it until it is. I went ahead and changed a bunch of bearings to try and fix a whine that may not even be coming from the transfer case. So hopefully, once this car is back on the road, this transfer case is not just gonna grenade itself and leave me stranded somewhere. Now, I will be looking for a replacement transfer case, primarily because I have 3 of these cars. I have the GL, the ML, and I have an R class. And chances are one of them is eventually going to grenade itself and need a new transfer case. My hope in putting this back together is that it's gonna continue to work in the same manner that it has been for the last 3 years. I have had no drivetrain issues. Other than that whine I described earlier, so hopefully the bearings that I replaced will fix that. With that, let's wrap this video up. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like what you see, click the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time when we're going to get the turbo and the engine finished up so that it can go back in the car. All right, see you later.